What if I told you one simple diet change could help your body, your wallet, and the planet?
Oh, here we go. Emily's about to save the world again with vegetables.
Brian, welcome back to the English podcast for listening and speaking, where we make learning English as delicious as a perfectly ripe avocado.
I'm Brian, your slightly skeptical co-host who still thinks bacon makes everything better.
And I'm Emily, and today I'm absolutely buzzing with excitement because we're talking about plant-based diets.
Right, so instead of my usual burger and fries, Emily wants me eating, grass?
Brian, you're ridiculous. Plant-based eating is so much more exciting than that, and here's the beautiful thing. It's healthier than processed food, cheaper than restaurant meals, and better for our planet than meat-heavy diets.
Hold on, did you hear what Emily just did there? She used comparative adjectives. Healthier than, cheaper than, better than.
Exactly. That's our grammar focus today, using comparatives to talk about food choices in a natural, confident way.
Instead of just saying vegetables are good, you can say vegetables are healthier than fast food. That comparison makes your English stronger and more persuasive.
Before we dive deeper, lovely listeners, please hit that like button if you're excited to learn about plant-based eating, and share this episode with someone who loves good food and great English.
Now, Emily, I have to ask, what exactly do you mean by plant-based? Are we talking full vegan here?
Great question. Plant-based simply means eating more foods that come from plants. Fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts, seeds.
So it doesn't mean I have to throw out my cheese collection and start chanting about kale?
Not necessarily. Some people go fully vegan, no animal products at all. Others become vegetarian, no meat but still eat dairy and eggs.
And what about people like me who just want to eat a bit healthier without giving up everything they love?
That's perfect too. Many people simply add more plant-based meals to their week, maybe meatless Monday or plant-based breakfasts.
I could probably say, I'm trying to cut back on meat instead of I'm going to eat grass forever.
Exactly. That's such a natural way to express it. I'm trying to cut back on meat, or I'm a big fan of plant-based meals.
You know what? I have to admit something. Last week I tried a lentil curry, and it was actually tastier than the chicken curry I usually order.
Brian, that's amazing. And you just used another perfect comparative, tastier than.
Don't get too excited, Emily. It was one meal. I'm not about to become a tree hugger overnight.
But that's the beautiful thing. Even small changes make a difference. And here's what I find fascinating. When people try plant-based foods with an open mind, they're often surprised by how delicious they are.
All right, I'll bite. What makes plant-based eating so special that you're practically glowing about it?
Oh, Brian, where do I even start? The health benefits, the environmental impact, the fact that you can feed your family nutritious meals for less money?
Hold on, less money? Now you have my attention. My grocery bills are more expensive than my rent these days.
See? Another natural comparative, more expensive than. And yes, beans and lentils are much more affordable than steak and salmon.
Okay, but here's my skeptical question. Can plants actually give me the same nutrition as meat? I work out. I need protein.
Brian, I'm so glad you asked. This is one of the biggest myths we need to bust. Plants can absolutely provide all the protein you need, plus fiber, vitamins, and minerals that meat doesn't offer.
But surely meat protein is more complete than plant protein, right? That's what every gym bro tells me.
Actually, that's more complicated than people think. Some plants like quinoa and soy are complete proteins, and even if they weren't, eating a variety of plants throughout the day gives you everything you need.
All right, before we go further down this rabbit hole, let's ask our listeners something.
Yes, dear listeners, have you ever tried eating plant-based for a day or even a week? Maybe you've experimented with Meatless Monday or tried a vegetarian restaurant.
Drop a comment and tell us about your experience. Was it easier than you expected? Harder than you thought? Did you discover any surprisingly delicious plant-based dishes?
And if you haven't tried it yet, what's holding you back? Is it concerns about protein, taste, convenience, or something else entirely?
We love hearing from you, and your questions help shape our conversations. Plus, other listeners can learn from your experiences too.
Speaking of experiences, Brian, I think this would be a perfect time to share some practical tips for our listeners who might be curious about trying plant-based eating.
All right, Emily, I'm actually curious now. But where would someone even start? I mean, I don't know the first thing about cooking with beans and, what did you call them? Lentils?
Oh, Brian, that's such a great question. And you know what? Starting is much simpler than people think. Let me give you what I call the plant-based starter kit. 5 ingredients that can transform your cooking completely.
A starter kit? Now you're speaking my language. I love when things are organized and practical. What are these magical 5 ingredients?
All right, here they are. First, canned beans, chickpeas, black beans, and kidney beans. They're pre-cooked, super convenient, and packed with protein and fiber. Second, red lentils. They cook in just 15 minutes and turn into the creamiest, most satisfying base for soups and curries. Third, quinoa. It's like rice but with complete protein, and it's fluffier and nuttier than regular grains. Fourth, nutritional yeast. I know it sounds weird, but it gives dishes this amazing, cheesy, umami flavor without any dairy. And fifth, a good plant-based milk. Oat milk is creamier than dairy milk for cooking, and almond milk is lighter and more refreshing for cereals and smoothies.
Wait, hold on. Nutritional yeast? That sounds like something you'd find in a chemistry lab, not in my kitchen. And you're telling me this stuff actually tastes good?
I know. The name is terrible for marketing. But Brian, it's honestly amazing. Imagine the best Parmesan cheese you've ever tasted, but nuttier and richer. You sprinkle it on pasta, stir it into creamy sauces, or even just shake it on popcorn. I actually call it magic dust in my kitchen because it makes everything taste more delicious and more satisfying.
Okay, you've got me intrigued with the magic dust. But let's get practical here. What would be the easiest first meal someone could try? Something that doesn't require me to completely reorganize my entire kitchen and learn 17 new cooking techniques?
Perfect question. Here's what I call the gateway recipe. A one-pot chickpea curry that's foolproof and incredibly satisfying. You heat some oil in a large pot, add diced onion and garlic until fragrant, throw in curry powder or garam masala, add a can of diced tomatoes, a can of chickpeas, and a can of coconut milk. Simmer for 20 minutes, season with salt and pepper, and serve over rice. It's creamy, hearty, full of protein, and tastes like you spent hours cooking when you actually spent 25 minutes.
You know what? That actually sounds doable, and more interesting than my usual rotisserie chicken and microwaved vegetables routine. But Emily, I have to ask, what about the social aspect? What happens when I'm eating with friends who think vegetables are just decoration on their steaks?
Oh, Brian, this is such an important topic. And you know what's fascinating? Food is probably more social than any other human activity. We bond over meals, we celebrate with food, we show love through cooking. So when someone changes their eating habits, it can feel threatening or confusing to the people around them. But here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to make it complicated or confrontational.
But what do you actually say when someone asks why you're not eating meat? I mean, I don't want to sound preachy or like I'm judging their choices.
That's such a thoughtful way to approach it. Here are some gentle, natural responses you can use. You could say, I'm just trying to eat more plants these days. Or, I'm experimenting with different ways of eating. Or, I'm focusing on foods that make me feel energetic. Notice how these phrases are positive and personal rather than critical of anyone else's choices. You're talking about what works for you, not what's wrong with their approach.
Those are good phrases. They sound natural and conversational. But what about dining out? I'm imagining walking into a steakhouse with my friends and trying to find something plant-based on the menu.
You know what? Even steakhouses are getting better with plant-based options. Most places now have at least a few dishes you can work with. You can usually find roasted vegetables, salads, pasta dishes that can be made without meat, or side dishes that you can combine into a meal. And here's a pro tip. Don't be afraid to ask your server to modify dishes. Most restaurants are happy to leave off the chicken or substitute extra vegetables for the bacon.
That's actually reassuring. I always assumed asking for modifications would be annoying to the kitchen staff. But what about different types of cuisines? Are some better than others for plant-based options?
Oh, Brian, this is one of my favorite topics. Different cuisines have such different relationships with plant-based eating. Indian cuisine is absolutely amazing for this. They have centuries of vegetarian cooking traditions, so the flavors are incredibly developed and satisfying. Think dal, vegetable curries, biryanis with just vegetables and spices. Mexican food is fantastic too. Beans, rice, vegetables, avocados, and all those beautiful salsas and seasonings. Thai and Vietnamese cuisines have tons of tofu and vegetable dishes that are bursting with flavor from herbs, spices, and aromatic broths.
You're making me hungry just talking about it. And I'm noticing you're using a lot of food vocabulary that might be useful for our English learners. Should we take a moment to break down some of these terms?
Absolutely. Let's dive into some food vocabulary that's incredibly useful in English conversation. First, let's talk about cooking methods. When I said roasted vegetables, roasting means cooking in the oven with dry heat, usually until the edges get slightly crispy and caramelized. It's different from boiling, steaming, or sautéing. Then there's simmering, which means cooking gently in liquid that's just below boiling point. You see tiny bubbles, but not the rolling boil of pasta water.
Those are really specific and useful words. What about describing taste and texture? I feel like when I talk about food, I just say good or bad, but there must be more precise ways to describe what I'm experiencing.
Oh, this is so important for expressing yourself clearly in English. For taste, you have the basic 5: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But then you can get more specific. Something might be tangy instead of just sour, or savory instead of just salty. For texture, you have crispy, crunchy, creamy, smooth, chewy, tender, fluffy, dense. And then there are more nuanced words like hearty, which means filling and satisfying, or refreshing, which means light and energizing. When you can describe food precisely, you sound much more natural and confident in English conversations.
That's really helpful. I can already imagine using some of those words when I describe food. But let's get back to the plant-based topic. Earlier, you mentioned that plants can provide all the nutrition someone needs. Can you break that down more specifically? What exactly am I getting from these different plant foods?
Absolutely. Let me break this down systematically. For protein, beans and lentils are powerhouses. 1 cup of cooked lentils has about 18 grams of protein, which is comparable to 3 ounces of chicken. Quinoa, hemp seeds, and chia seeds are complete proteins, meaning they have all 9 essential amino acids. For healthy fats, you've got avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil. For iron, dark leafy greens like spinach and kale, plus beans and fortified cereals. For calcium, sesame seeds, tahini, broccoli, and fortified plant milks often have more calcium than dairy milk.
Those numbers are actually pretty impressive. But here's something I'm wondering about. How do you plan meals to make sure you're getting all of this nutrition without having to become a food scientist? I mean, I can barely remember to take a daily vitamin.
Brian, you don't need to become a scientist. I like to think of it as the color and variety rule. If your plate has lots of different colors throughout the week, dark greens, orange carrots and sweet potatoes, red tomatoes and peppers, purple cabbage and berries, white cauliflower and onions, you're probably getting a good range of nutrients. And if you're including some form of protein like beans or nuts, some healthy fats like avocado or olive oil, and some whole grains like brown rice or quinoa, you're covering your bases beautifully.
The color rule makes sense. It's visual and simple. But what about meal prep? I know some people spend their entire Sunday cooking for the whole week. Is that necessary for plant-based eating? Or can you keep it simple for busy people like me?
You can definitely keep it simple. Here's what I recommend for busy people. Spend maybe 30 minutes on Sunday doing what I call foundation prep. Cook a big pot of quinoa or brown rice, roast a sheet pan of mixed vegetables, and open and rinse a few cans of beans. Then during the week, you can throw these components together in different combinations. Monday might be a grain bowl with the roasted vegetables and beans. Tuesday could be a quick stir-fry with the pre-cooked grains. Wednesday might be a soup where you add the roasted vegetables to some broth and beans. Same ingredients, completely different meals.
That actually sounds manageable and creative. I like the idea of having building blocks instead of complicated recipes. But let's talk about shopping. When I go to the grocery store, I usually just grab whatever looks familiar. How do you shop for plant-based ingredients without getting overwhelmed by all the options?
Great question. I always tell people to shop the perimeter of the store first. That's where you'll find the fresh produce, and those should be the stars of your cart. Then I like to think of shopping in categories. In the produce section, grab some dark leafy greens, some colorful vegetables, some fruits, and maybe some fresh herbs if you're feeling adventurous. In the pantry section, stock up on canned beans, whole grains like quinoa and brown rice, nuts, seeds, and maybe some fun condiments like tahini or coconut milk. Don't feel like you need to buy everything at once. Just add 1 or 2 new ingredients each week.
That's smart advice about adding new ingredients gradually. But what about seasonal eating? Does it matter when I buy certain vegetables, or can I just get whatever looks good regardless of the time of year?
Oh, seasonal eating is such a game changer. When you buy produce that's in season, it's usually cheaper, more flavorful, and more nutritious. Think about it. Strawberries in December have to be shipped from far away and picked before they're ripe, so they're expensive and often tasteless. But strawberries in June from local farms are sweet, juicy, and affordable. Spring gives us asparagus, peas, and fresh herbs. Summer brings tomatoes, zucchini, berries, and stone fruits. Fall offers apples, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and Brussels sprouts. Winter gives us hardy greens, citrus fruits, and root vegetables that are perfect for warm, comforting soups and stews.
You're making a strong case for seasonal eating. And you mentioned earlier that plant-based eating can be cheaper. That definitely caught my attention. Can you give me some specific examples of how someone could save money while eating this way?
Absolutely. Here's a concrete example. A pound of dried black beans costs about $2 and makes roughly 6 cups when cooked. That same amount of protein from chicken would cost at least $8 to $10. A bag of oats for breakfast costs less than $3 and lasts for weeks, while a comparable amount of breakfast meat or fancy cereals could cost $15 to $20. Frozen vegetables are often cheaper than fresh and just as nutritious. A bag of frozen broccoli might cost $2 and last for several meals. And seasonal produce can be incredibly affordable when you shop smart.
Those numbers are pretty compelling, but I want to address some concerns that I think a lot of people have. What about the myths and misconceptions around plant-based eating? I feel like there's a lot of conflicting information out there.
Oh, this is so important. Let me tackle some of the biggest myths I hear. First, you can't get enough protein from plants. We've already discussed how false this is. Second, plant-based food is boring and tasteless. This usually comes from people who think plant-based means plain steamed vegetables. But we're talking about curries, stir-fries, hearty grain bowls, creative salads, smoothies, soups. The flavor possibilities are endless. Third, it's too expensive. Again, we've shown this isn't true when you focus on whole foods rather than expensive processed alternatives. And fourth, it's too complicated. But we've talked about simple, manageable approaches that anyone can handle.
Those are good points. But what about the environmental angle you mentioned at the beginning? I've heard people say that plant-based eating is better for the planet, but I've also heard people argue that it's not really making much of a difference. What's the reality there?
The environmental impact is actually quite significant and well documented. Animal agriculture uses about 70% of agricultural land, but provides only 18% of our calories. It also produces substantial greenhouse gases. Livestock accounts for about 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Plant-based foods generally require much less water, land, and energy to produce. For example, producing 1 pound of beef requires about 1,800 gallons of water, while producing 1 pound of vegetables requires only about 39 gallons. Even small changes like having one plant-based meal per day can make a meaningful difference when multiplied across millions of people.
Those environmental statistics are pretty eye-opening. But let's get personal for a moment. Have you always eaten plant-based, Emily? Or did you make a transition at some point? I'm curious about your own journey with this.
Oh, Brian, that's such a great question. I definitely wasn't always plant-based. Growing up, my family was very traditional. Meat and potatoes, Sunday roasts, the works. I probably didn't eat a vegetable that wasn't corn or potatoes until I was in college. My transition actually started about 7 years ago when I was feeling really sluggish and tired all the time. A friend challenged me to try eating more plants for just 1 week, and I was amazed at how much more energetic I felt. That 1 week turned into a month, then 6 months, and now here we are.
That's really interesting. So it wasn't an overnight transformation. But I have to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced during that transition? I'm sure it wasn't all smooth sailing and delicious lentil curries.
Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. The first few weeks were honestly pretty rough. I had no idea how to cook without meat as the centerpiece, so I was basically eating sad salads and plain pasta. I remember one particularly depressing dinner of plain brown rice with some frozen peas. I actually called my mom crying and asking if I could just come home for a proper meal. The social situations were tricky too. Going to restaurants and having nothing to order, or being at family gatherings where people kept asking if I was feeling okay, because I wasn't eating the roast beef.
Plain brown rice with frozen peas? That does sound pretty depressing. But you obviously figured it out eventually. What was the turning point for you? When did it start to click?
The turning point was when I stopped trying to replace everything and started learning about completely new foods and cuisines. I signed up for a cooking class focused on Indian cuisine, and suddenly I discovered this whole world of spices, techniques, and flavor combinations I'd never experienced. That's when I learned about garam masala, cumin, turmeric, and how to build layers of flavor in a dish. I also started following food bloggers who specialized in plant-based cooking. Seeing their beautiful, colorful photos made me realize I'd been thinking about this all wrong. Instead of focusing on what I couldn't eat, I started getting excited about all the new things I could explore.
That's a really smart approach, framing it as exploration rather than restriction. And it sounds like learning about different cultures and cuisines was a big part of your journey. Speaking of which, how do different cultures around the world approach plant-based eating? I imagine it varies quite a bit.
Oh, Brian, this is fascinating. The approaches are incredibly diverse. In many parts of India, vegetarianism has been practiced for thousands of years for religious and philosophical reasons. So they've developed incredibly sophisticated plant-based cooking techniques. In the Mediterranean, the traditional diet is naturally plant-forward, with lots of vegetables, legumes, olive oil, and whole grains, though they do include some fish and dairy. In Japan, Buddhist temple cuisine called Shojin Ryori creates elaborate, beautiful meals using only plants, focusing on seasonal ingredients and minimal processing. In parts of Africa, beans, grains, and vegetables form the foundation of many traditional dishes, with meat often being a special occasion food rather than an everyday staple.
That's really eye-opening. It sounds like in many cultures, plant-based eating isn't seen as some new trendy diet. It's just traditional cooking. Can you give us some specific examples of dishes that people might recognize?
Absolutely. Think about dishes you probably already know and love. Italian pasta e fagioli, pasta with beans, is a classic comfort food that happens to be plant-based. Mexican refried beans with rice and guacamole, Middle Eastern hummus, falafel and tabbouleh. Thai pad thai with tofu and vegetables, Chinese mapo tofu or vegetable lo mein. Even American dishes like baked beans, 3-bean chili, or a big hearty minestrone soup. Many of these dishes have been around for centuries, and they're naturally satisfying and delicious without needing any meat at all.
You know what? You're right. I love a lot of those dishes and never really thought of them as plant-based. They're just good food. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of cooking. What are some fundamental techniques that can help someone create really flavorful plant-based meals? I feel like that's where a lot of people might struggle.
This is such an important question. The key to amazing plant-based cooking is understanding how to build layers of flavor. First, learn to love aromatics. Onions, garlic, ginger, and fresh herbs are your best friends. Always start by sautéing these until fragrant before adding other ingredients. Second, toast your spices. Heating spices like cumin, coriander, or curry powder in a dry pan for just 30 seconds releases their essential oils and makes them much more flavorful. Third, don't be afraid of salt and acid. A pinch of salt brings out natural flavors, and a splash of lemon juice, vinegar, or tomatoes can brighten an entire dish. Fourth, use umami-rich ingredients like mushrooms, soy sauce, miso paste, or nutritional yeast to add that savory, satisfying depth that people often associate with meat.
Umami. That's that savory, almost meaty flavor, right? I've heard of it, but never really understood what it meant in practical terms. Can you give me a specific example of how someone might use these umami ingredients in an actual dish?
Perfect example. Let's say you're making a simple tomato pasta sauce. Instead of just tomatoes, garlic, and herbs, you add finely diced mushrooms at the beginning and let them cook until they release their moisture and get golden brown. Then you add a tablespoon of soy sauce or tamari. Not enough to make it taste Asian, but enough to add that deep, savory complexity. Maybe you stir in a tablespoon of nutritional yeast at the end. The result is a sauce that's incredibly rich and satisfying, with a depth of flavor that makes you think, wow, this is really hearty and filling, rather than, this tastes like I'm missing something. The mushrooms add texture and earthiness, the soy sauce adds saltiness and umami, and the nutritional yeast adds a subtle cheesiness.
That actually sounds amazing, and I can totally imagine how those flavors would work together. But let's talk about meal structure. For someone just starting out, what would a typical day of plant-based eating look like? I mean, what do you actually eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Great question. Let me walk you through what a typical day might look like. For breakfast, you could have overnight oats with almond milk, chia seeds, berries, and a drizzle of maple syrup. Or a smoothie with spinach, banana, mango, plant-based protein powder, and coconut water. Or even avocado toast with hemp seeds and everything bagel seasoning. For lunch, maybe a hearty grain bowl with quinoa, roasted vegetables, chickpeas, avocado, and a tahini dressing. Or a big colorful salad with mixed greens, beans, nuts, seeds, and olive oil vinaigrette. For dinner, that chickpea curry we talked about earlier. Or a stir-fry with tofu and vegetables over brown rice. Or even a plant-based chili with cornbread. And for snacks, things like hummus with vegetables, fruit with nut butter, or trail mix with nuts and dried fruits.
Those all sound really good and surprisingly filling. But what about convenience? I mean, some mornings I barely have time to grab a cup of coffee before running out the door. Are there quick options that don't require a lot of prep time?
Oh, absolutely. Quick plant-based meals can be even faster than conventional options. For breakfast, those overnight oats I mentioned, you make 5 jars on Sunday night and grab one each morning. No cooking required. Or you can blend a smoothie in 2 minutes and drink it on your way to work. Banana with almond butter takes 30 seconds. For lunch, if you did that foundation prep we talked about earlier, you can assemble a grain bowl in 3 minutes. Scoop some pre-cooked quinoa, add pre-roasted vegetables, sprinkle some beans, drizzle some tahini. For dinner, you can make a simple pasta with marinara sauce and vegetables in the time it takes the pasta to cook. Or heat up some canned soup with a side of bread and salad. The key is having those building blocks ready to go.
That building blocks approach keeps coming up. It really does seem like the key to making this manageable. But what about situations where you don't have control over the food? Like work events, traveling, or family gatherings? Those can be tricky even with a regular diet.
These situations definitely require some strategy. For work events, I often eat a small snack beforehand so I'm not starving. And then I focus on whatever plant-based options are available, even if it's just the salad and bread rolls. Most catering now includes some vegetarian options. For traveling, I pack portable snacks like nuts, dried fruit, or energy bars, and I research restaurants at my destination ahead of time. Many apps now let you filter by dietary preferences. For family gatherings, I often bring a dish to share, something delicious that everyone can enjoy, whether they're plant-based or not. That way I know there's at least one thing I can eat, and often people are curious to try it and discover they love it too.
That's smart thinking. Being prepared but not making it a big deal. You mentioned apps for finding restaurants. Any specific recommendations? And what about fitness and sports? I know some people worry about having enough energy for workouts or building muscle on a plant-based diet.
For restaurant apps, Happy Cow is fantastic for finding vegetarian and vegan restaurants anywhere in the world. Even regular restaurant apps like Yelp now let you filter by dietary restrictions. As for fitness, this is actually one of my favorite topics to address because there are so many successful plant-based athletes. Think about tennis champions like Venus Williams, ultramarathoner Scott Jurek, or NFL players like Derek Morgan. The key for athletic performance is getting enough calories and focusing on nutrient-dense foods. For muscle building, you need adequate protein, which we've established is totally achievable with plants, plus enough overall calories to support your training. Many plant-based athletes actually report better recovery times, less inflammation, and more sustained energy levels compared to when they ate meat.
That's really interesting about the athletes. Better recovery and less inflammation sounds pretty appealing. But are there any supplements that plant-based eaters should consider? I know there's always discussion about B12 and other nutrients.
Great question. B12 is really the only supplement that's absolutely essential for anyone eating fully plant-based, because B12 comes from bacteria and isn't naturally found in plant foods. But here's the thing. Many people, even meat eaters, are B12 deficient, so it's worth getting tested regardless of your diet. A simple weekly B12 supplement or B12 fortified foods like nutritional yeast or plant milks can cover this easily. Some people also choose to supplement vitamin D, omega-3s from algae, or iron. But these are often beneficial for everyone, not just plant-based eaters. The good news is that plant-based diets are typically higher in many other nutrients, like fiber, folate, potassium, and antioxidants compared to the standard American diet.
That makes sense. It sounds like B12 is really the main thing to pay attention to. But what about families with children? I know some parents worry about whether plant-based eating provides everything growing kids need.
This is such an important concern for parents. The good news is that major health organizations, including the American Dietetic Association and the British Dietetic Association, have stated that well-planned plant-based diets are appropriate for all life stages, including childhood. The key phrase is well-planned. Just like any diet, you need to pay attention to getting a variety of nutrients. Children need adequate calories for growth, good sources of protein, healthy fats like those from avocados and nuts, and foods rich in iron, calcium, and B12. Many plant-based families focus on nutrient-dense foods like nut butters, avocados, beans, and fortified plant milks. And honestly, plant-based kids often have more diverse palates because they're exposed to such a wide variety of vegetables, grains, and cuisines from an early age.
That's reassuring to hear that major health organizations support it. But let's be practical. What about picky eaters? Whether they're kids or adults, some people are really resistant to trying new foods, especially vegetables. Any strategies for dealing with that?
Oh, this is so important. Picky eating is really common, and the key is making changes gradually and focusing on familiarity. Start with foods people already like, and just make small modifications. If someone loves pasta with marinara sauce, maybe add some finely diced vegetables to the sauce. If they like smoothies, blend in some spinach that they can't taste. Use familiar flavors and presentations. Instead of a big salad that might seem intimidating, maybe try vegetable-based versions of comfort foods like mac and cheese made with cashew cream, or tacos with seasoned lentils instead of ground beef. The texture and flavors are familiar, but the ingredients are plant-based. And never underestimate the power of good seasoning. Properly seasoned roasted vegetables can convert even the most dedicated carnivore.
Those are some clever strategies. I like the idea of making familiar foods with plant-based ingredients. But what about when people start this journey and then face challenges or setbacks? How do you stay motivated when things get difficult or when you're tempted to give up?
Such a wise question, Brian. I think the biggest thing is to remember why you started and to be gentle with yourself during the learning process. If your motivation is health, keep a journal of how you feel, energy levels, digestion, sleep quality. Many people notice positive changes within just a few weeks. If your motivation is environmental, remind yourself that even small changes make a difference. You don't have to be perfect to have an impact. And if you have a slip-up or eat something you hadn't planned to, don't throw in the towel completely. Just get back on track with your next meal. I always tell people that progress is more important than perfection. Also, connect with others who are on a similar journey, whether that's online communities, local meetups, or just friends who are interested in exploring plant-based meals together.
That community aspect sounds really important. And I have to say, this conversation has been incredibly informative. We've covered so much ground, from practical cooking tips to environmental impacts to social situations. But before we start wrapping up, is there anything else you think our listeners should know if they're considering trying plant-based eating?
I think the most important thing is to approach it with curiosity and excitement rather than restriction and fear. You're not giving something up. You're opening up a whole new world of flavors, cuisines, and ingredients. Start small. Be patient with yourself. And remember that every plant-based meal is a win, whether you're doing it 1 day a week or 7 days a week. Focus on adding rather than subtracting. Add more colorful vegetables, experiment with new grains, try different spices and herbs. And remember that this is ultimately about feeling good, physically, environmentally, and ethically. When you find delicious plant-based meals that make you feel energized and satisfied, you'll naturally want to eat more of them.
You know what, Emily? I have to admit, you've really changed my perspective on this. I came into this conversation thinking plant-based eating was complicated and restrictive. But you've made it sound approachable and actually exciting. I'm genuinely curious to try some of these recipes and techniques you've mentioned.
Brian, that makes me so happy to hear. And you know what? I think our listeners might be feeling the same way. So let me give everyone a practical challenge to try this week. Choose just one meal, maybe lunch or dinner, and try making it plant-based, using some of the strategies we've discussed. Use those foundation ingredients we talked about, beans, grains, vegetables, and some good seasonings. Whether it's that simple chickpea curry, a hearty grain bowl, or even just a really amazing salad with lots of toppings, see how it feels to create something delicious and satisfying without meat or dairy.
That's a great challenge. And I think I know what I'm going to try first. That one-pot chickpea curry you described sounds foolproof and delicious. But for listeners who want to explore this further, do you have any recommended resources? Books, websites, or apps that might help them on this journey?
Absolutely. For cookbooks, I love Minimalist Baker's Everyday Cooking for simple, approachable recipes, and Plenty by Yotam Ottolenghi for more creative, flavor-focused dishes. For websites, the Minimalist Baker blog has amazing recipes that use 10 ingredients or less and take 30 minutes or less. Oh, She Glows is great for both beginners and more advanced cooks. For meal planning, the app Mealime lets you filter for vegetarian and vegan options and generates shopping lists automatically. And YouTube is honestly incredible for learning cooking techniques. Channels like Pick Up Limes and Rainbow Plant Life have beautiful educational videos that make everything look so doable and delicious.
Those are excellent resources. I'm definitely going to check out some of those YouTube channels. And speaking of learning, let's take a moment to highlight some of the vocabulary and phrases we've used throughout this conversation that might be particularly useful for our English learners.
Great idea. Let's recap some key vocabulary from today. We used many food preparation terms like simmer, sauté, roast, and caramelize. We practiced comparative phrases like healthier than, more affordable than, and tastier than. We learned texture words like creamy, hearty, crispy, and satisfying. We discussed phrases for expressing dietary preferences like, I'm trying to cut back on meat, I'm experimenting with plant-based eating, and I focus on foods that make me feel energetic. We also covered restaurant vocabulary like modify a dish, substitute ingredients, and dietary restrictions. All of these phrases are incredibly useful in everyday English conversations about food and health.
Those are really practical phrases that people can use in real conversations. And now I want to hear from our listeners again. After everything we've discussed today, what questions do you still have about plant-based eating? Maybe you're wondering about specific ingredients, or you have concerns we haven't addressed, or you want to share your own experiences trying plant-based meals?
Yes. Please share your experiences in the comments. Tell us what you tried, how it went, what surprised you, what challenged you. Your stories help other listeners feel more confident about trying new things. And if you do take on that one meal challenge I mentioned, we'd love to hear about it. Take a photo of your creation and tag us on social media. Seeing real people cooking real food is so much more inspiring than perfect magazine photos.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. And leave us a review if you found this episode helpful. Your feedback helps us create more content that's useful for English learners who want to talk about topics they're genuinely interested in.
Before we finish, I want to say thank you to Brian for being so open-minded during this conversation. It's been wonderful to watch your perspective evolve from skeptical to genuinely curious. And I think that journey mirrors what many people experience when they learn more about plant-based eating. The key is staying open to new information and new experiences.
And thank you, Emily, for being so passionate and knowledgeable, while also being practical and realistic. You've shown that plant-based eating doesn't have to be all or nothing, and it definitely doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. I think you've given our listeners, and me, a lot to think about and try.
Well, lovely listeners, that's a wrap on today's deep dive into plant-based eating. We've covered everything from practical cooking tips and budget strategies to environmental impacts and social situations. Remember, whether you try one plant-based meal this week or decide to explore this lifestyle more extensively, every step counts. Keep practicing those comparative phrases we discussed, experiment with new vocabulary when you're talking about food, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and who knows? Maybe next episode I'll be sharing my own plant-based cooking adventures. This is Brian.
And Emily from the English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. Thanks for joining us on this delicious journey, and we'll see you next time.
Actually, before we completely finish, Emily, I realize we covered so much ground today that some listeners might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. Could you walk us through a simple, step-by-step plan for someone who wants to try plant-based eating for just 1 week, like a beginner's roadmap?
Oh, Brian, that's such a thoughtful idea. Let me create a simple 7-day plan that anyone can follow. Day 1, Monday. Start with oatmeal with berries for breakfast, have a big salad with chickpeas for lunch, and try that simple chickpea curry for dinner. Day 2, smoothie with banana and spinach for breakfast, leftover curry for lunch, pasta with marinara and vegetables for dinner. Day 3, avocado toast for breakfast, grain bowl with quinoa, and roasted vegetables for lunch, and a hearty vegetable soup with bread for dinner. Day 4, same oatmeal as Monday, but try a different fruit topping, leftover soup for lunch, and a simple stir-fry with tofu and vegetables for dinner. Day 5, another smoothie, but with different fruits, a large salad with beans and nuts for lunch, and maybe try a plant-based pizza with vegetables for dinner. Day 6, for the weekend, try overnight oats that you prepared the night before, a nice grain bowl for lunch using any leftover ingredients, and maybe experiment with that mac and cheese made with cashew cream I mentioned. Day 7, finish strong with a big smoothie bowl topped with granola and fruit, a hearty salad for lunch, and end the week with a celebration meal. Maybe that pasta with the umami-rich mushroom sauce we discussed. The key is to reuse ingredients throughout the week. Keep meals simple, and don't be afraid to repeat things you enjoyed.
That sounds very doable and organized. And I like how you're reusing ingredients. That seems like it would help with both cost and simplicity. Could you give us a shopping list for that week? What specific items would someone need to buy to follow that plan?
Absolutely. Here's your shopping list. For grains and pantry staples, rolled oats, quinoa, brown rice or pasta, canned chickpeas, canned diced tomatoes, coconut milk, vegetable broth, tahini, nutritional yeast, and your basic spices like garlic powder, cumin, and curry powder. For fresh produce, bananas, berries, spinach, avocados, onions, garlic, carrots, bell peppers, broccoli, and whatever seasonal vegetables look good. For proteins, a block of tofu, some nuts like almonds or walnuts, and maybe some hemp seeds or chia seeds. For plant-based alternatives, oat milk or almond milk, and maybe some plant-based cheese if you want to try that pizza. That's really it. This list should cost much less than a week of typical groceries and will give you everything you need for 7 days of delicious, satisfying meals.
That shopping list is surprisingly manageable. What about preparation? Should people do any prep work ahead of time, or can they just cook as they go throughout the week?
Great question. A little bit of prep goes a long way. On Sunday, spend about 30 minutes washing and chopping your vegetables, cooking a big batch of quinoa, and maybe roasting some vegetables like carrots, bell peppers, and broccoli. Store everything in the refrigerator in clear containers so you can see what you have. This makes assembling meals during the week incredibly quick and easy. You can also prepare your overnight oats for the first few days and make any sauces or dressings you want to use. The beautiful thing about plant-based cooking is that most of these ingredients actually get better after sitting for a day or two as the flavors meld together. And don't forget, if something doesn't turn out perfectly the first time, that's totally normal. Cooking is a skill that improves with practice.
That's reassuring about the learning curve. Are there any common mistakes that beginners tend to make when they're starting with plant-based cooking? Things that might discourage people or make them think they're doing something wrong?
Oh yes, there are definitely some common pitfalls. The biggest mistake I see is under-seasoning. People think that because the ingredients are healthy, they don't need much seasoning. But plants really shine when they're properly seasoned with salt, spices, and acids like lemon juice. Another mistake is not getting enough variety. Eating the same basic salad every day will get boring fast. The third mistake is trying to replicate meat dishes exactly instead of celebrating what plants can do on their own. And finally, people sometimes don't eat enough calories overall because plant foods are often less calorie dense than animal products, so they feel hungry and think the diet isn't working. The key is to eat generous portions and include healthy fats like avocados, nuts, and olive oil.
Those are really helpful tips to avoid common pitfalls. How should someone track their progress during that first week? What should they pay attention to in terms of how they're feeling or what they're experiencing?
Excellent question. I always recommend keeping a simple journal during that first week. Track 3 things: your energy levels throughout the day, your digestion, and how you feel after meals, and your overall mood and mental clarity. Many people notice increased energy and better digestion within just 3 to 5 days. Also, pay attention to your sleep quality. Plant-based meals tend to be easier to digest, so many people sleep better. Keep note of which meals you really enjoyed and which ones felt most satisfying. And don't worry if you feel hungry at first. Your body might need a few days to adjust to the different fiber content and meal timing. The key is to listen to your body and eat when you're hungry, making sure to include those healthy fats and proteins we discussed.
That journaling approach sounds really helpful for staying aware of changes. Have you heard success stories from people who've tried this kind of week-long experiment? What kind of feedback do you usually get?
Oh, Brian, I have so many wonderful stories. Just last month, a friend tried this exact week-long plan and told me she had more energy than she'd felt in years. She said she stopped experiencing that afternoon energy crash she always had around 3 p.m. Another person told me that their chronic digestive issues improved dramatically within just 5 days. I've had people discover that they actually love vegetables when they're properly seasoned and cooked. One person said they never knew broccoli could taste so good. And so many people are surprised by how full and satisfied they feel after plant-based meals. They expect to be hungry, but when meals are balanced with protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates, they're actually more satisfying than many people expect. The most common thing I hear is, "I didn't realize how delicious this could be."
Those success stories are really motivating. And I think that 7-day plan you outlined gives people a concrete, manageable way to dip their toes in the water without feeling overwhelmed. It's not a lifetime commitment, just a week-long experiment to see how they feel.
Exactly. That's the beautiful thing about it. There's no pressure, no judgment, just curiosity and exploration. And at the end of that week, people have real data about how they feel, what they enjoyed, and what worked for their lifestyle. Some people decide to continue, some people incorporate more plant-based meals into their regular routine, and others decide it's not for them right now. And all of those outcomes are perfectly valid. The important thing is that they tried something new and learned about themselves in the process.